There is a figure that lurks in the world of One Piece that will be very important in the endgame of the story, and that is the king of the world, the man at the helm of the world government, Imu. Not much is known about this shadowy figure, however, I would say that you can connect some things in the story to make the case that he will be Luffy's final and biggest adversary for the freedom of the One Piece world. Imu definitely has a big role to play in the future of the story, that's a no-brainer, but there are questions of whether he would be a very powerful combatant or just the brains behind the world government, giving orders to the factions through the Gorosei and downwards. Given the title of the video, you would have figured out that I think that Imu will be a combatant and Luffy's final adversary. Whether it be Imu's combative capabilities or he uses some sort of weapon, that doesn't really matter. In this video, I'll be explaining my theory and how I came to the conclusion that Luffy versus Imu is in fact inevitable. Whitebeard's last speech at Marineford before his death actually gives us an idea of how the final big event of the story will unfold. Whitebeard says that the world government fears the Great War that will occur, which implies that it will be against them. The world will be turned upside down when the One Piece is found, and the man that will challenge the world will be bearing the weight of centuries of history. You all know who the man that Whitebeard is talking about will be, and that's none other than the future Pirate King, Monkey D. Luffy. The Pirate King would have learnt the truth and the history of the world, what the people of D and the ancient weapons are, and would have found the One Piece. All this will be the catalyst of what will be the greatest war the world has ever seen, and that will be when Luffy and his allies challenge the world government. Since the final Great War is inevitable, then it should stand to reason that the fight between its leading factions would also be inevitable. Let me preface by saying that I'm presenting this video as a theory because although I'll be supporting a lot of my points with facts from the story, the conclusions I'll be drawing from them aren't concrete but more so reasonable assumptions as to the reason why Luffy will fight Imu. I've spoken about Luffy and how he will affect the world as Pirate King, so I'll turn to Imu. Imu, as we know, is the holder of the empty throne and is the king of the world in the shadows. No one in the world even knows he exists and the position he has except the Gorosei. The Gorosei, who are the 5 highest ranking celestial dragons, bow down to Imu and take orders from him. The question is, how exactly did Imu achieve this power? Doflamingo tells Law that the reason he holds the influence of a celestial dragon despite falling from grace is his knowledge of a crucial weapon that exists within Marijoa. Dofi continues by saying that if he had Law's Devil Fruit, the Opioponomi, that day, he would have been able to make use of Marijoa's treasure and gain true world power, essentially becoming the king of the world. How the Opioponomi and Marijoa's treasure gives a person worldly power isn't really relevant to this discussion. It could have made Dofi the strongest in the world or allow him to do something else that would give him such world power. It doesn't really matter. The takeaway from this is that what's being described is a position of power Imu already possesses, and it's possible that it was achieved using the method that Doflamingo planned to use. The question now is, when did Imu gain this power? There are many possibilities as to how and when Imu gained this world power and influence. It might have been hereditary, inherited, or maybe Imu is just a title and is taken by a member of the Gorosei through an election, but I've chosen to go with the Opioponomi and the Marijoa treasure. As for when, Imu gained this world power before the formation of the world government. In other words, the Void Century 800 to 900 years ago. That might be a tough pill to swallow, and I understand that I'm effectively saying there exists a person who's over 800 years old, much older than Dr. Kureha, who's 114 years old and the oldest known character in the story. But this can only be made possible with the immortality operation, the ultimate ability of the Opioponomi, giving Imu eternal youth. Since the Opioponomi was used by Imu to gain world power, using it to become eternally young is also reasonable to believe. Professor Clover deduced that the people from the Void Century must have had an enemy, and they left indestructible messages, which are the poneglyph. The poneglyph revealed the existence of the ancient kingdom, which was destroyed by what we know today as the world government, and Imu is the leader of this faction. The leader of the opposing faction, the leader of the ancient kingdom, I believe that was none other than Joy Boy. Just like Imu, not much is known about Joy Boy, despite that it's very clear that he's a very important figure in the story, as he's the man who left behind the legendary treasure on Laugh-Tale. Roger even wished that he had been born in Joy Boy's era, so this man must have been someone great for the likes of Roger to say this. Joy Boy must have had connections with the Kozuki clan as well, because he had left an apology to the mermaid princess of his time in the form of a poneglyph. The poneglyphs were written by the Kozuki clan. Based on Professor Clover's deduction, the very existence and idea of the ancient kingdom is a threat to the world government, which is the reason why they are suppressing history by making it illegal to decipher the poneglyphs. Luffy, the future pirate king, also presents the same kind of threat, if not greater, because this was all left by Joy Boy. He was the leader of the ancient kingdom, and Imu was his greatest adversary. At face value, the connections between Luffy and Joy Boy, they aren't clear, but for more details, check out my theory video on Luffy becoming the next Joy Boy for this era. I've already said that Imu was alive in the Void Century and is still living because he has eternal youth. Joy Boy wouldn't have such a thing, so it leads me to believe that Joy Boy isn't just a person, but a title, a role that one must take to become the Joy Boy. If Luffy is carrying the will of Joy Boy, then it makes sense that he would have succeeded where Joy Boy failed and defeat Imu, taking down the world government. Before the revelry started, Imu went into a chamber inside Marijoa, and we saw a big straw hat. What's interesting is that it almost seemed like Imu went there just to cross-examine Luffy's straw hat from the bounty poster, since it looked very familiar. I'm very sure, because of the way that Imu was acting, that that big straw hat did in fact belong to Joy Boy, and not only does it give Luffy becoming the next Joy Boy credence, but it also further suggests that Joy Boy was in fact Imu's main enemy and the leader of the ancient kingdom. If this is the case, then it makes sense that Imu would hold onto a possibly very iconic possession of his greatest foe to erase his presence from history. And hey, maybe that chamber that we saw the big straw hat in, maybe that straw hat was actually on top of Joy Boy's coffin, and that might have been a coffin. You can kind of see like a crevice kind of in the middle of it. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's very, very possible, but we will see later on in the story. Luffy is also from the family of D, and Corazon tells Law that the people of D are known as the enemy of the gods being the celestial dragons. Corazon suggests that the people of D's goal is the destruction of the world. Of course, this is a false narrative, and it's the same lie that the Gorosei were perpetuating with deciphering the poneglyphs. I mean, it's like when they were saying that, oh, deciphering the poneglyphs is a bad thing because it will revive the ancient weapons and that will be a threat to the world, but in reality, they were trying to suppress the existence of the ancient kingdom that they had destroyed 800 to 900 years ago. So in the same way, the reality of the people of D's goal, or the will of D, could be the defeat of the world government and the liberation of the world from the celestial dragons. If that's the case, then it would make sense that the celestial dragons would say that the destruction of the world is their goal, because that's what it would mean to them. It also does tie in very nicely with Whitebeard's final speech, and he only knew all this because Roger told him everything there was to know in their last conversation. Or maybe it's something completely different and I'm totally wrong. When it's all said and done, the fight for the future of the world will no doubt be in the final great war against the world government. And I'm placing my stakes specifically in the fight between the god, the king of the world, Imu, versus the devil who bears the name D, and the pirate king, Monkey D. Luffy. Let me know what you think about this theory in the comment section below. Like the video, subscribe if you enjoyed, and until next time.